Part 16. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 151. Chapter 151 Stealing Luck. Tong Yu finally decided, let Director Wei work hard to find it. Going to recommend Mr. Shen to the health director, she may not think that her life is too long. Fortunately, it seems that the heroine of her artist has been basically confirmed now. All she needs is a formal announcement, and the biggest stone in her heart has finally fallen. In this case, I won't arrange work for you during this period. Emperor Yuan Zhao has a prototype in history. Before joining the group, you should read the history books and figure out how to act. I will explain it to Mr. Xiao. By the way, how about letting Zheng Zheng accompany you to the museum and the former site of Yinhe Palace to experience it personally? Zhang Lingzi subconsciously wanted to shake her head and refuse. She was who she was, so why bother trying to figure herself out? But after thinking about it again, it would be good to go to the museum and Yinhe Palace. For her, it was like revisiting her old place. So he nodded, okay. Then I'll ask Zheng Zheng to make an appointment first. Tomorrow is Monday and the museum will be closed. You can go the day after tomorrow. There won't be many people on weekdays. After a pause, anyway, you are pretty good at pretending. At least in the video of playing a shooting game to torture high school students, no one has discovered that the person behind it is actually a celebrity. Zhang Lingzi touched her nose. Tong Yu returned the phone. It seems like there was news from your mother just now. Zhang Lingzi took it, clicked on the message and felt a little headache after reading it. What's wrong? My mother asked if I would like to go home for dinner in the evening. My father went fishing with others today and caught a particularly big cockroach. Why are you hesitating when there is delicious food? Why do you look so reluctant? She asked me to take her son-in-law back with me. Tong Yu silently closed her mouth. Zhang Lingzi wanted to say something back but had no time, but before typing, she calculated the time of the last meeting and finally chose to give up. Parents let their children go home to have a meal, apparently because they have delicious food at home, but in fact they just want to see their children. She took the place of her original body, so she couldn't be unable to satisfy even such an ordinary wish as her elders. After a while, she switched the chat interface to Shen Yunqing, typed directly and asked, do you have time tonight? My mother asked us to go back for dinner. The mobile phone on the tea table vibrated slightly. I noticed that the pulse under my fingers jumped suddenly, and I unconsciously took back my hand that was checking the pulse. It seems that it should be a message from a very important person. Let's take a look first. Shen Yunqing didn't even bother to be polite to him. She picked up her phone and clicked on it. After reading the message, she softened and said, I have time. Zhang Lingzi, okay, 5 o'clock. I will pick you up. Zhang Lingzi didn't refuse, so she got used to this kind of thing. Replied okay and closed the chat interface. Shen Yunqing put down his cell phone and said, I'm sorry I can't have a meal with you tonight. Are you going to eat with His Majesty? Seeing Shen Yunqing preparing to hand over his hand, Wuju waved his hand, that's all, you're not calm right now, and it's easy to get your pulse wrong, so let's try another time. But even without feeling your pulse, I can see from your face that the backlash is much lighter. If you take good care of yourself, it won't be a serious problem. But I have something to ask you. It's rare to hear the word please from your mouth. Shen Yunqing suppressed the smile on his face, please say it. I suspect that my little junior sister was not dead at first, or that she was not completely destroyed in body and soul as I thought. You also know that the mental methods we cultivated at the beginning are of the same origin, and we are all sensitive to each other. Not long ago, I felt the familiar fluctuations are fleeting and quickly hidden, but I always feel uneasy. Hearing Wuju talk about his little junior sister, a dark look flashed in Shen Yunqing's eyes, I remember you said that your little junior sister created a way to absorb other people's luck and maintain her own immortality. If it's really like what you said, if she is still alive, she must have quietly harmed a lot of people. There was a trace of shame on Wuji's face. The matter of stealing luck was my negligence. I will continue to pursue this matter, and the reason why I entrust you. There was murderous intent in Shen Yunking's voice. She will keep an eye on His Majesty's luck. Yes, in terms of luck, His Majesty, who opened up and expanded the territory of Dayin and maintained peace for 100 years, is naturally unparalleled. No one else can, and with you taking on the backlash for her, there will be almost no loss of luck. My little junior sister must be extremely greedy. Shen Yunqing nodded heavily at him. Okay, I will pay attention. If the real owner is caught, I will not show mercy. No need to show mercy, but make sure she can't do evil again. Asterisk. What time did you make an appointment with Mr. Shen to set off? 5 o'clock. Tong Yu looked at the time, picked up the bag beside her and stood up. She called out to Lu Zhengzheng, who was sorting clothes in the cloakroom. Zhengzheng, we have to go. Ah, but I still have a few things to pack. Mr. Shen will be here soon. Lu Zhengzheng immediately changed her words. Then I've almost finished cleaning up. See you later, Sister Zixi. Zhang Lingzi. She couldn't help but be confused when she saw Tong Yu and Lu Zhengzheng like this. Is Shen Yunqing really that terrible? It's like a mouse meeting a cat. After sending the two of them off, Zhang Lingzi went back to her room and continued to read for a while. It wasn't until the clock in the living room said it was past 4 o'clock that she got up and changed out of her overly casual clothes and put on light makeup. Coming out of the cloakroom, the clock in the living room started to chime, and the doorbell rang almost at the same time. Really on time. The door opened. Zhang Lingzi subconsciously looked at Shen Yunqing's hand. This time, I didn't have a food box, but a car key. Wait while I get something. A mobile phone and a bag are essential. Zhang Lingzi also took a few pieces of packed clothes from the cloakroom. When he arrived in front of Shen Yunqing, who was waiting at the door, he naturally took the clothes. Closing the door, the two of them walked to the elevator together. Are you driving by yourself today? Well, Huzi has a day off today. Going downstairs, looking at the pure black car parked at the door that she had never seen before, Zhang Lingzi was silent for a moment, and then got in after Shen Yunqing opened the passenger door. I think she also raised a lot of expensive or strong mounts in her previous life, and no matter which one she took out, she would be regarded as the best among horses. As a result, now, we are reduced to not even having a steel car. A little sour. Ms. Zhang, fasten your seat belt in the front seat. Zhang Lingzi recovered from her slight sourness, pulled the seat belt aside and buckled it silently. Shen Yunqing couldn't help turning his head to look at her before starting the car. He was obviously fine from the moment they met at the door to when he got off the elevator, so why did he become so depressed in the blink of an eye? After the carriage was quiet for a moment, he cautiously asked, what unpleasant things happened recently? Zhang Lingzi, you don't understand. How can you, a person who owns so many cars, understand the feeling of being suddenly poor but still being severely stimulated by being rich all over the world? Shen Yunqing. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 152. Chapter 152. The elder sister who knows how to cook and the brother-in-law who knows how to cook. The car drove into the community, and Zhang Lingzi also recovered. Although she doesn't make much money now, it doesn't mean she won't make it in the future. One day, she will be able to afford her own car. Shen Yunqing didn't help carry things this time, because he also brought a lot himself. The two of them packed their bags and walked to the door. Zhang Lingzi took out the spare key and opened the door. When she opened the door, she saw Zhang Wenhui leaning half out of the kitchen, 11:11 Yunking is here. Come and sit on the sofa in the living room. There is something on the coffee table. Freshly cut fruit. Zhang Lingzi put down her things before sitting down. She turned to the kitchen first, sniffed and asked, "Is your food burnt?" Zhang Wenhui also sniffed, "Oh, it's really my fish head stewed with tofu." As he said this, he went straight to the pot on the gas stove. Zhang Lingzi took the opportunity to glance at the messy kitchen. Where are Dad and Xiaoxu? Why didn't they help you? There's no soy sauce at home, and your dad just went out to buy it. Didn't Xiaoxu sign up for a tutoring class 2 days ago? He's still studying in his room now. Don't worry, I can handle it. Zhang Lingzi couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth, looked back at Shen Yunqing who was following her, motioned to him another apron placed on the hook at the door, and rolled up her sleeves. Shen Yunqing was really stunned for a moment before he understood what she meant. He took off his apron and stepped forward. Zhang Lingzi stretched out her arms in cooperation, let him help her put it on, and then picked up the spatula placed aside. Is there anything left to cook? Zhang Wenhui had just saved her fish head and stewed tofu when she turned around and saw her daughter who had already put on an apron and her son-in-law standing beside her. She was shocked and said, "You don't need this. Go to the living room to eat fruit and watch TV. I don't know when I'll be able to eat if I leave you to work alone." Zhang Lingzi dodged Zhang Wenhui's hand that wanted to drive her out of the kitchen. "Don't worry, I will cook for myself occasionally." Zhang Wenhui, I am speechless. So when Zhang Runqing bought a bottle of soy sauce and returned home, he saw his daughter standing in front of the gas stove in the kitchen, waving a spatula skillfully, and his son-in-law sitting on a small stool next to the sink, choosing vegetables. He couldn't help but raise his hands to knead. Rubbing his eyes. Isn't he afraid that he accidentally drank 2 glasses of wine at the canteen and got himself drunk? The soy sauce was delivered, and there was one more helper in the kitchen. Zhang Lingxiu felt thirsty and went out to get some water. As soon as he opened the door, he smelled the strong aroma outside. Since when did he become so good at cooking? While thinking about it, I followed the smell all the way to the kitchen, and saw the sister who was in charge of cooking and the brother-in-law who was helping, standing there. Did he hallucinate while doing the questions? Zhang Lingzi turned around and saw Zhang Lingxiu standing blankly at the door of the kitchen. She handed over the plate of sweet and sour fish she had just made and said, "Put it on the dining table." Zhang Lingxiu came to his senses with a start, and quickly stepped forward to take it, took a deep breath of the aroma of the sweet and sour sauce, and neatly placed it on the table outside. With more people, there is greater strength, and in a short time, a full fish feast was ready. Zhang Lingzi reached behind her back and was about to take off her apron, when she touched a slightly cold hand before touching the knot. The two of them paused. She took it back without leaving a trace, felt the knot loosen behind her, pulled off the apron and turned around to hang it up. When she turned around, she met Zhang Wenhui's eyes with a pursed lips and a smile. According to the feedback from viewers, this daily love is indeed in place. After finishing the meal, Zhang Wenhui was determined not to let Zhang Lingzi and Shen Yunqing go into the kitchen to help. "Lao Zhang and I are washing the dishes. It's hard for you two to come here and have a good rest." Even Zhang Lingxiu was kicked out when he wanted to help. Seeing the couple washing dishes in the kitchen, Zhang Lingzi turned her attention to Zhang Lingxiu. "I heard from Mom that you went to a tutoring class. How did you do?" When Zhang Lingxiu heard this, he almost showed a mask of pain, and nodded while trying to maintain his expression. "It's a bit difficult, but I will try to overcome it." Zhang Lingzi felt a little sad when she thought that she had not made any progress in her review, and glanced at the couple who were still there. He didn't come out to wash the dishes, so he asked, "Do you still teach Sanda in your tutoring class?" Zhang Lingxiu was stunned when asked, "I won't teach you." "Then where did the injury on your arm come from?" Zhang Lingxiu originally wanted to use the same excuse to fool his parents, but when he looked at his sister's penetrating eyes, he couldn't say anything. He whispered, We got into a fight. Zhang Lingzi's breath didn't change, and she just asked, "Why are we fighting?" "Sister, you know why I ended up in the juvenile detention center. I didn't expect that there was that man's son in the art tutoring class across the street. He recognized me on the first day and threatened to avenge his father. He would find someone after class. Block me. Moreover, everyone at the training center knows that I have been in the juvenile detention center, and no one is helping me." At the end, Zhang Lingzi could hear that the child was about to cry out of grievance. "Why don't you tell your family and change your tutoring class? I used to be willful and impulsive, which made my parents worry a lot, and I don't want them to worry about me anymore." Zhang Lingzi couldn't help but rub the head that almost dropped to her chest. Shen Yunqing had been listening quietly and did not interrupt the conversation between the siblings. At this moment, he suggested, "How about I find a tutor for Xiaoxu?" Zhang Lingzi pondered for a moment. "You really can't continue attending that tutoring class. You can't learn anything in this kind of atmosphere. It's just a waste of time. You have to hide this from your parents and I can help you hide it, but I find that you can't do anything except study now. There is something more important to learn." Zhang Lingzi nodded subconsciously, then asked with a puzzled look on his face, "What to study?" Zhang Lingzi did not look at him, but turned to look at Shen Yunqing. The moment their eyes met, the two people's thoughts were instantly synchronized. Shen Yunqing's tone was gentle. "What your sister means is, don't let others push you away, even your relatives and friends around you. You have to think about what you want." Zhang Lingzi opened his mouth and tried to muster up the courage. Under the encouraging eyes of his sister and brother-in-law, he finally clenched his fists and expressed the hidden desire in his heart. "There is a music tutoring class downstairs in our tutoring class. I secretly attended a few classes. I want to learn music, is that okay?" Zhang Lingzi: "Young man, isn't your span a bit big?" Shen Yunqing coughed lightly. "Singing, musical instrument, or composing?" "Compose, can I try it?" Facing the young man's shining eyes, Zhang Lingzi raised her hand to rest her forehead. "I'll go back and ask the company if there is any department that recruits students like you." If she remembered correctly, the company also trains singers, songwriters, and composers, but she didn't know whether to recruit newbies who had no basic skills and only had passion. The three of them had discussed it, and Zhang Wenhui also finished her work in the kitchen. After looking at the time, he smiled and said, "It's a bit late now. Why don't you two stay here for one night and then go back tomorrow morning? You can just go to bed after the room is tidied up." Zhang Lingzi couldn't help but take a breath. She regrets it now. She should have taken the others and fled just now. "I thank you for your kindness, but I still have some urgent work to deal with when I get back." Zhang Wenhui suddenly looked regretful. "Okay then, drive carefully on the way back, and call to say you're safe when you get home." After being sent all the way out of the unit building, until she got into the car, Zhang Lingzi looked at Shen Yunqing, who had just lied to her without blinking an eye, and said, "Thank you." Shen Yunqing checked twice before inserting the car key into the hole. On the surface, he said calmly, "You're welcome." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 153. Chapter 153, Being Assistant to Consultant Shen for a Day. It wasn't until a mobile phone message alert sounded that the somewhat inexplicable atmosphere in the car was relieved. Zhang Lingzi saw that the person who sent the voice message was Tong Yu. She thought it was about work, so she generously clicked play. Xiao 11, we have made reservations to visit the museum and Yinhe Palace. Tuesday is the day after tomorrow. We will go to Yinhe Palace first then. The appointment is to enter at 9 a.m. Don't remember the wrong time, and don't oversleep. The scenic spot is a bit far from where you live. Okay, I get it. After replying to the message and putting down the phone, Zhang Lingzi noticed that Shen Yunqing, who was sitting upright and concentrating on driving, glanced at her. Is something wrong? No, you want to visit Yinhe Palace. Zhang Lingzi always felt that his tone was a bit subtle when he said the word visit, but he didn't think much about it and just nodded vaguely. Go and take a look around. That's good. Yinhe Palace is well protected and is the best preserved royal building complex. There are many people from all over the world visiting it every day. Zhang Lingzi couldn't help but look at him. So, you've been there too? She couldn't imagine what it would be like for this man to queue up among the tourists. Go often? Often. Zhang Lingzi was about to ask, do you like it there that much? It's because I like Dayan's history that I love Yinhe Palace's Iwajiwo, but think about it, even if you like it, there's no need to go there often. This is a scenic spot, not a place to eat and rest. Fortunately, Shen Yunqing soon answered her doubts. I got a job there. What position? Dayan Historical Research Consultant. Zhang Lingzi was silent for several seconds this time. It seems that you really like the history of Dayan. Even the research consultant is involved. He must have a deep understanding of the history of Dayan. Shen Yunqing nodded slightly, although this was only one aspect. On the other hand, it is naturally because it is the place where the people around me once lived, and where they used to meet the emperor and his ministers from time to time. But when you go to visit Yinhe Palace, aren't you afraid of being recognized by tourists? Of course I have to dress up, and Tuesday is a working day, so there shouldn't be many people, right? The last word "ba" was in a questioning tone. Naturally, she herself was not very sure. While waiting for the light to turn green at the intersection, Shen Yunqing took out his mobile phone and fiddled with it for a while, and finally turned the screen of his mobile phone to Zhang Lingzi. This is the normal flow of people in Yinhe Palace. Looking at the crowds of people on the screen, Zhang Lingzi said. She touched her nose. Shen Yunqing said again, there will be many times more holidays. Zhang Lingzi, that's really popular with everyone. She even doubted whether what she could see here was scenery or people. I wonder if it's okay to withdraw the voice message sent to Tong Yu now? I suggest you go on Monday. But my agent said the museum will be closed on Mondays. Zhang Lingzi paused as she spoke. Thinking of what she just heard, she looked towards Shen Yunqing. If you are a staff member, you should be able to go in on Mondays. Yes, Shen Yunqing met Zhang Lingzi's eyes and nodded lightly. If you want to go, I will take you there. Compliance. You can use your identity as an assistant, if you don't mind. Shen Yunqing restarted the car. In addition, some areas of Yinhe Palace are not open to tourists. Only staff can enter for inspection and maintenance. If you are a tourist, I can only see some peripheral attractions whose photos can be found online. If it were anyone else, he would naturally not abuse this authority. But the people around me are different. In his heart, no one is more qualified to enter Yinhe Palace than her. Zhang Lingzi has never been a hesitant person, especially after hearing that not all areas of the Yinhe Palace were open to tourists. She also wanted to see the palace where she once went to court and studied and rested. She left in such a hurry that she didn't have time to go back and take a look before she closed her eyes. She didn't know whether the small box she had hidden in the secret compartment of the Yashu Pavilion bookshelf had been dug out by future generations. Immediately smiled and nodded. Okay, I'll be advisor Shen's assistant tomorrow. I'd like to trouble you. Shen Yunqing was not surprised. You're welcome. Since it was decided to visit tomorrow, Zhang Lingzi took out her mobile phone and messaged Tong Yu to tell her about it. The other side first replied 6 o'clock, and then replied, have a nice visit. As long as it's not particularly urgent tomorrow, I won't disturb you. You, to be precise. Zhang Lingzi. There is no need to be so cautious. The car is parked below the unit. Zhang Lingzi got out of the car, turned around and waved towards the window next to the driver's seat. The dark car window was lowered. What would you like to have for breakfast? Having been fed twice, and not only Lu Zhengzheng but also Tong Yu usually brought food when they came over, Zhang Lingzi was somewhat used to it, and this time she ordered a few without being polite. Shen Yunqing wrote down carefully, "Okay. See you tomorrow." It wasn't until the lights on Zhang Lingzi's floor came on that Shen Yunqing raised the car window and drove away. Asterisk. Probably because the breakfast he wanted would be delivered to his door later, Zhang Lingzi rarely got up early. By the time the doorbell rang, she had even changed into clothes for going out later. Looking in the mirror and comparing the white shirts and suit trousers worn by those working online, Zhang Lingzi neatly tied her long hair into a low ponytail, turned around and opened the door. The door of the room opened. Shen Yunqing looked up with the food box in hand. When he saw Zhang Lingzi's outfit clearly, he was stunned for a moment. "What, I don't look like an assistant, this is what I see online." These were the clothes she found after rummaging through almost half of the cloakroom. After all, she doesn't often wear clothes like this. No, it should be said that this is the first time she has worn it. Even the hang tag has just been taken off. No, Shen Yunqing shook his head quickly, "Actually, just follow your usual dressing habits. There is no need to dress so formally." Zhang Lingzi stepped aside to open the door. "Since I am your assistant, it is not easy for anyone to talk about you." Shen Yunqing then remembered that the person in front of him had been wearing the coarse linen clothes commonly worn by ordinary bosses for several days in order to gain a deeper understanding of the people's sentiments during the private visit. This is His Serious Majesty. He walked in carrying the food box. "Miss Zhang is more thoughtful." "There's no need to boast about such a small thing." Zhang Lingzi waved her hand and fixed her eyes on the food box in his hand. "Let's start the meal quickly." She was already hungry after working so hard early in the morning. And she didn't know if it was because Shen Yunqing had similar tastes and preferences to hers, but every time this person brought meals, they were particularly to her liking. Of course, it would be better if this person had nothing to hide from her. Shen Yunqing smiled and nodded, opening the lunchbox and setting out the meal a little faster without any trace. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 154. Chapter 154, Regret. Before leaving the house, Zhang Lingzi took out another pair of gold-framed plain glasses and put them on. She met Shen Yunqing's gaze and said, "You need a complete set for acting. How about it?" "Not bad, right?" Shen Yunqing allowed himself to take a few more glances when she turned around to look in the mirror. When she turned around, she quickly returned to normal. "Pretty good." "That's good, let's go." But when she got downstairs, Zhang Lingzi looked at Shen Yunqing, who opened and closed the car door for her, and silently buckled the passenger seat belt as her assistant had to drive for her boss. "This work is not necessary." The vehicle left the community and drove steadily north. Unknowingly, the high-rise buildings had been replaced by some low antique buildings. The flow of people and vehicles on the road became much smaller, and the field of vision suddenly broadened. Before she could ask a question, an explanation came from the side. "This area is already considered a scenic spot. All major scenic spots are closed to tourists on Monday, so there will be fewer people coming here. It will be lively after today." Since there were not many people, Zhang Lingzi simply lowered the car window and looked at the buildings on the street. Although it is antique, it is not completely antique. When you get closer, you can see a lot of modern traces. After looking at it for a moment, she looked away. Although Shen Yunqing was driving, he kept paying attention to the side with the corner of his eye. He noticed that Zhang Lingzi's face was a little uninterested, and she pursed her lips and said, "Almost 1 kilometer further, there is a real 1,000-year-old building." there is a relatively complete street that is fairly well preserved. Although after thousands of years, the city has changed rapidly, and the changes in the city can be said to be earth-shaking. However, some evidence of historical existence has been paid attention to and carefully maintained by caring people in the past years, thus leaving precious historical heritage to future generations. John Lingzi could already vaguely notice that the road ahead was somewhat familiar, and after hearing what Shen Yunqing said, she immediately thought, is this Wanchao Street? Yes, there was an imperceptible smile in Shen Yunqing's voice. He still remembered how the name of the street was come up with by His Majesty. Thousands of years ago, Dayan was so powerful that all the surrounding countries expressed their submission. Every year, the kings of the subject countries and even the princes and princesses of other countries would go to the capital city of Dayan to pay homage to the emperor, and the street in front of the Yinhe Palace was exactly where these people had to pass on their way to worship. Therefore, His Majesty changed the original Changping Street to the domineering name of Wanchao Street, which means the visit of Wanchao Street. History has also recorded this name. Thinking about the original name of Changping Street, except for those scholars who study the history of Dayan, no one knows it. Zhang Lingzi turned her gaze to the window again. She has never been willing to give names. Even the name of the panda cub she picked up before was given with help from others. Wanchao Street was the only name she changed. Unexpectedly, after 1,000 years, only such a street would be preserved. She couldn't quite explain how she was feeling. But before entering Wanchao Street, the car was stopped by uniformed guards on the roadside. The car was not allowed to pass until Shen Yunqing handed over a green-covered document through the open window. Taken back the document, Shen Yunqing noticed the gaze from the side that was on the document. He was about to put it back into the storage box in the car but changed his direction. Zhang Lingzi raised an eyebrow when she saw this, but took it in her hand unceremoniously. When you open it, you will see a color 2-inch ID photo, which is no different from a real person. Below the photo is your name, position, affiliation, certificate number, and other information. She took one more look at the photo before closing it. Do I have to show this every time to get in? Only Monday. Zhang Lingzi nodded and said he understood. You can't enter Wanchao Street on Mondays either. Yeah. The car slowly drove onto the road paved with bluestones. Having gone through tens of millions of wind, rain, carriages, and horses, even the hardest bluestone has now been polished smooth. However, the car was driving slowly, and Zhang Lingzi noticed that there were many more patterns carved on the bluestone, which did not exist 1,000 years ago. One is for anti-slip, and the other is for aesthetics. Zhang Lingzi, I didn't ask, you just knew. Shen Yunqing remained silent. Although he has changed into a similar body, as a minister, isn't it the most basic thing to be attentive to the emperor's small movements and expressions? What's more, he has a deeper thought. It was a street that was not very long, and the car drove for nearly a quarter of an hour. Zhang Lingzi looked at the blooming flowers and row upon row of buildings on both sides of the street, feeling somewhat disappointed. No matter how well it is preserved, there is still a big difference in her eyes. She still remembered that she took Qing Yuan out of the palace quietly to play, and the Wanchao Street was the place she walked the most. This is the most prosperous area in the entire Dayan capital city, and it also represents the facade of Dayan. You will not feel bored even if you spend a whole day strolling there. Now, only these immortal buildings remain, allowing people 1,000 years from now to remember that dazzling history. Passing Wanchao Street, they crossed another long jade belt stone bridge. This time, without Shen Yunqing having to speak, Zhang Lingzi had already seen the Yinhe Palace standing in front of her. Yinhe Palace is built on the green screen of the mountain. The buildings are stacked on top of each other. It is not a magnificent style, but solemn and majestic. Especially since there are no tourists at this moment, only workers patrolling and maintaining the building in twos and threes. Without the crowding and noise, all that is left is the momentum of the building itself and the aura left over from thousands of years of existence. Zhang Lingzi looked up at the towering imperial city gate in front of her and couldn't help but take a deep breath. In her last life, she had some regrets that she died of illness on the road before returning to the imperial court alive, and she never thought that she would one day come back here again. It can be regarded as a different way of settling one's regrets. The car did not enter through the main entrance, but after checking the documents again, it entered through a side door. The front is the office area, and we have to apply for a temporary work permit. Zhang Lingzi nodded. No need to ask, this temporary work permit was just for her. However, in this office space, Zhang Lingzi looked at the familiar building in front of her. If she remembered correctly, this was where internal affairs officials ran errands. Unexpectedly, after 1,000 years, the function of this courtyard is still the same. Stop the car, and before getting out of the car, Zhang Lingzi puts on her pair of plain glasses again. Walking all the way to the door of the office, a middle-aged man who also wore glasses hurriedly walked out, and they almost bumped into each other face to face. Shen Yunqing immediately raised his hand to protect Zhang Lingzi aside. His eyes were slightly focused and the corners of his lips were pursed, looking a little unhappy. Zhang Lingzi happened to look at the person next to her subconsciously because of the arm lying in front of her, and was stunned when she saw this. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 155. Chapter 155 The Promising Assistant Zhang. Before she could look back, the person opposite lowered her head and apologized. Sorry, I was in a hurry to go out. When he raised his head and saw the person standing in front of him, the apology on his face suddenly turned into surprise. Mr. Shen, why are you free to come here today? Come on, I just received a notice that there is something new at Qivai Palace. I found something that is suspected to have been used by Emperor Yuan Zhao, please come with me to take a look. Shen Yunqing was stunned but could not get angry. I'm afraid not yet. Ah, why? The middle-aged man paused, then noticed a slender and beautiful girl standing beside him. I'm sorry, I was too excited. Who is this girl? Zhang Lingzi, I am Mr. Shen's assistant. Assistant, Mr. Shen's new recruit. The girl can become Mr. Shen's assistant at such a young age. She has a bright future. Facing the middle-aged man's approving gaze, Zhang Lingzi smiled and nodded, I think so too. Shen Yunqing. He let out a breath and said, I'll come over and apply for a temporary work permit. Oh, it's for the assistant. I happen to have a new one here. I'll get it when I go back. Shen Yunqing looked at him and hurriedly turned back. He saw Zhang Lingzi smiling again, and explained helplessly, the person just now was Fu Yunchen, the deputy director of the Yinhe Palace Museum. He is a bit impatient. He usually behaves like this when he makes new discoveries. It seems like this isn't the first time you've been raped. Shen Yunqing nodded helplessly, it's indeed not the first time. My surname is Fu. Zhang Lingzi just sighed casually, not expecting that the people around her would understand. Shen Yunqing understood why she sighed. Come here comes the work permit. Fu Yunchen hurried back with a small blue sign, came to Zhang Lingzi and Shen Yunqing, and quickly took out a pen from the pen holder on the side. What's the girl's name? Zhang Lingzi. The surname of day and state is Zhang, which means the prohibition of orders and the dawn of the East Sunday. Zhang. Fu Yunchen's pen tip fell on the paper. As soon as he wrote a word, his strokes were paused. He looked up at the girl standing in front of him elegantly. He wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't say a word, but he was extra careful. Carefully write the remaining two words, okay. Zhang Lingzi took it and imitated him by hanging the work badge around his neck. Turning around, he saw that Shen Yunqing had also hung up his, but the color was different, using a purple rope and a purple sign. Better looking than hers. Assistant Zhang will go there too, right? Good. In fact, when she heard that there was a new discovery in Qivai Palace, she wanted to go and have a look. She didn't know about other dynasties, but in the Dayan dynasty, Qivai Palace was always the palace where the queen lived. Her mother also lived in Qivai Palace for several years. It was not until she ascended the throne and her mother was promoted from queen to queen mother that she moved out of Qivai Palace. However, she never named a male queen or even a male concubine in her life, so Qivai Palace remained empty. It is very possible that there are items inside that she used when she lived with her mother in Qivai Palace when she was a child. Shen Yunqing will naturally not object. So the two of them sat in the office for less than 2 minutes before getting on the self-balancing scooter to Qivai Palace. That's right, balance bikes are the most commonly used means of transportation for the staff of Yinhe Palace. Just because the Yinhe Palace occupies a large area. If you only walk on 2 legs, walking from the southernmost palace to the northernmost palace will take a day. If you use other means of transportation, you are afraid of damaging the environment and occupying a small area. The convenient and fast balancing car has become everyone's first choice. Now there is one for everyone. Even before Zhang Lingzi arrived, Fu Yunqian helped her borrow one as fast as getting a temporary work permit. After a few simple exercises in the yard, the 3 of them stood on the balance car and set off. Zhang Lingzi was busy exploring other functions of the balancing car, and unknowingly she surpassed the other 2 people. Fu Yunqian, who was lagging behind, wanted to remind her not to go in the wrong direction, but saw that the girl seemed to be more familiar with the route to Qivai Palace than he, the deputy director, so he put his raised hand back. Turning around to chat with Shen Yunqing who was keeping pace next to him, Assistant Zhang has been to Yinhe Palace before. Shen Yunqing nodded, and at the same time added in his heart, not only has he been here before, but in terms of familiarity with this Yinhe Palace, I am afraid that no one in the world can compare with the former owner of this place. After walking for some distance, Fu Yunqian suddenly hissed, "Wait a minute, I just remembered that Qivai Palace and the surrounding areas seem to be closed to the public." Assistant Zhang, "Oh, Consultant Shen, wait for me." As he hurriedly and slowly caught up with the 2 people who had left him far behind, he looked at Qivai Palace not far ahead and suddenly had no intention of worrying about the problem just now. "Let's go and see if it belongs to Emperor Yuan Zhao. To enter the palace, you need to wear footwear first." Zhang Lingzi took the footwear handed over by Shen Yunqing and put it on a little unfamiliarly. She raised her feet and crossed the threshold of Qivai Palace. She looked at the familiar furnishings and the empty palace. Time seems like a lifetime ago. "Come." The sound coming from the front made her suddenly come back to her senses, and she raised her feet to follow. When I saw the arm-long box carefully held out by the staff in the temple, I was stunned again. Since entering Qivai Palace, Shen Yunqing has been paying close attention to Zhang Lingzi without leaving any trace. Looking at her expression, he knew that this box was most likely left by the Queen Mother. Fu Yunqian had already put on gloves to take the box while the 2 of them were looking at it, but when he saw that the box was locked, he couldn't help but frowned. "Why didn't you explain clearly that there is a lock on this box?" "If I had known, I would have called Mr. Gong over." "Mr. Shen, I don't have much research on this machine lock. Why don't you give it a try?" Shen Yunqing's contribution to the historical research of Yinhe Palace is no less than that of his deputy director, and Fu Yunqian has almost blind confidence in him. However, Shen Yunqing did not answer this time. He hesitated and said, "Let's wait for Mr. Gong to come over. Your Majesty is right next to you. How can he have the nerve to show off in front of Guangong?" Fu Yunqian had no choice but to put down the box and prepare to go out and make a phone call. Zhang Lingzi stopped him. "Director Fu, I have some research on machine locks. Why don't I give it a try?" "Then, Assistant Zhang, try it first, be careful not to damage it." Although Fu Yunqian agreed, he didn't have much confidence in her, so he walked out with his cell phone. Zhang Lingzi didn't say anything when he saw this. He took the gloves from Shen Yunqing and put them on before touching the lock on the box. In fact, she didn't have a deep impression of this box. She vaguely remembered that it was a plaything when she was about 10 years old. She couldn't remember exactly what was put in it. She only remembered that the box belonged to a machine master at that time. As a training exercise, she seems to have carved her own mark on the bottom, meaning it belongs to her. It was only now that she saw her again that she suddenly realized that she had stayed in her mother's harem. Fortunately, because I often played with this mechanism as a child, I already have body memory. Without thinking too much, he quickly moved his fingers a few times and heard a crisp loudspeaker sound. The staff whispered in his ear, "Wait." Before the next words could be spoken, Zhang Lingzi had already raised her hand to open the box. After seeing what was inside, Zhang Lingzi looked at her hand that was still holding the lid of the box and hated herself for being so quick just now. Just asking, is it too late to restore the mechanism now? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 156. Chapter 156. Where are the antiques belonging to Emperor Yuan Zhao? She never expected that the items contained in it were all objects she had used or played with when she was a child. Unexpectedly, the Queen Mother kept it for her all this time. Even though the things inside were played with for a while when she was a child, she threw them away and replaced them with other new things. The topmost thing in this box is an exquisite grasshopper cage, which is also engraved with patterns that ordinary people can't understand, but the grasshopper inside is long gone. She learned this from the fun-loving playboys in the capital at that time. Underneath the grasshopper cage is a round fan that is exquisitely made but no bigger than an adult's palm. The only flaw is the green embroidery on the fan, and the stitching is so sloppy that you can't bear to look at it. This is the result of her mother forcing her to learn needlework when she was a child. Her mother shook her head when she learned it, and she gave up in the end. Zhang Lingzi resisted the urge to hide her face and continued to look to the side. A bamboo sword as long as a child's arm, a small bow of almost equal proportions, and some other less lethal weapons also made of plants. When she was a child, she was unhappy that only her brother could practice martial arts with the martial arts master, so she asked the craftsman in the house to make her a weapon. When her mother found out, not only did she not stop it, but she also helped her argue with her father. There were some rolled up papers underneath. Although the staff on the side quickly stopped her before she could take it out and open it for a look, she guessed that this was most likely the result of her calligraphy and painting practice when she was a child. At the same time, some of the works are quite eye-catching. Praises received from elders in childhood often make children happy for days, and she was no exception when she was a child. However, now that she has discovered these things, Zhang Lingzi feels that her image of being wise and powerful in the eyes of future generations may be partially compromised. But at this moment, she was more filled with feelings. Ever since she imprisoned, exiled, and reprimanded all her brothers, coupled with the busy schedule of government affairs in the court, the longer she was the emperor, the colder the relationship with her mother became. She has always thought that the mother must have felt that the smart and sensible daughter she once had around her was gone, and she had been replaced by an emperor full of ambition and majesty, especially when she could deal with even her own brother without any hesitation. But looking at these things that were still well preserved in front of her, she was thinking that if she had not been so stubborn and had been willing to talk about her heart when she went to her mother's harem to pay her respects, the relationship between them would have been easier. After all, they were such a close mother and daughter. It's a pity that it's too late for her to think of this now. Shen Yunqing stood quietly beside Zhang Lingzi, watching her hand caressing the pattern on the box unconsciously, and he could somewhat understand her mood at the moment. Ever since he entered the court, he had seen the Queen Mother, who had always been reclusive and uninvolved in worldly affairs, at some large palace banquets, and he could sense the stiffness of the relationship between the mother and daughter of the Tian family. He originally thought that the Queen Mother was resentful of His Majesty, but now he saw the items in the box and the sentimentality in His Majesty's eyes. Thinking about it now, the mother and daughter both had feelings for each other, but they could not relax until death. "You opened it?" A surprised shout from behind broke the silence in the hall. Zhang Lingzi subconsciously closed the box with her backhand, and both she and Shen Yunqing looked back. Fu Yunqian walked over with wind at his feet, passed them directly, walked to the box, opened it carefully, and asked, "Assistant Zhang opened it?" "I didn't expect Assistant Zhang to have this skill, I'm disrespectful." "But why should you close it when it's already open? Even if you have to close it, don't be so rough. If the contents of this box really belonged to Emperor Yuanzhao, it would be really precious." After speaking, he sighed again. There are really too few relics about Emperor Yuanzhao, especially when compared with other emperors in the past. It can be said that things are rare and valuable. Zhang Lingzi has now understood the reality. This box, there must be no way to hide the contents in the box. She was already planning to smash the jar. When she heard Fu Yunqian's words, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Are there very few relics of Emperor Yuanzhao? It's not just a few, it's simply pitiful. Not to mention that no one has found the tomb of Emperor Yuanzhao so far. There are also artifacts collected for playing and even some writings and paintings. I still doubt whether it is all of them were taken for burial, otherwise none of them would be found. Zhang Lingzi frowned when he heard what he said. When she was dying, she once told her that her funeral should be simple. If possible, it would be better to be cremated than to rot a little, and not to bury some precious items with her. Having seen countless lives and deaths on the battlefield, she doesn't care about death as much as life. She only knows that everything ends in death. Is it possible that the next emperor simply didn't do what she said? Fu Yunqian's attention was all on the box at the moment, and Zhang Lingzi was also lost in thought at the moment, so neither of them noticed that Shen Yunqing, who was standing on the other side, touched his nose without leaving any trace. "Let me see what's in this box." The remaining word "what" was silently silenced after Fu Yunqian saw clearly what was placed in the box. Replaced with, "What are all these?" Zhang Lingzi looked up at the carved beams and painted pillars on Quivai Palace, and then looked down at the smooth polished golden stone tiles under her feet, saying that she didn't know either. Having said that, Fu Yunqian carefully took out the things and looked at them, until he reached the bottom of the paper roll. He hesitated but still didn't touch it with his hands. "I'd better take it back and test the composition of the paper first. Don't accidentally damage it. Open it after it's processed." Consultant Shen, Assistant Zhang, "I'll go work on this first, you too." It would take a lot of time to deal with such an object that would be damaged if not properly protected, and he was embarrassed to let the two people in front of him wait with him. Shen Yunqing Kong Shen Ruliu said, "I just happened to bring Assistant Zhang here and there is other work to do. Director Fu will go and do it first." Fu Yunqian immediately put the box away and called out to his subordinates who found the box, "Advisor Shen is busy with you, so I'll excuse you now. I'll send you a message when the paper is processed." From the box, the grasshopper cage and other items, it is still not 100% certain that they belong to Emperor Yuanzhao, especially since there is a messy embroidered fan inside. He is now placing his greatest hopes on those scrolls. When Fu Yunqian and his men left in a hurry, Zhang Lingzi and Shen Yunqing, who were left in the palace, looked at each other silently. In the end, Shen Yunqing lowered his eyes slightly and said, "Should we go out first and start from the main entrance of the imperial city, or should we start from Quivai Palace?" Quivai Palace. When she came here to say hello before, she would always come and go in a hurry, and at most she would have a cup of tea and a snack. Thinking about it now, it has been a long time since I took a serious look at the palace where my mother lived for several years. End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 157. Chapter 157 Millennium Spruce. However, the two of them did not stay in Kwivai Palace for long. After a general visit, Zhang Lingzi realized that she had made a mistake. The box that was found before was kept in a hidden location, so it was not discovered until this 1,000 years later. After her, several emperors ascended the throne in the Yinhe Palace, and several queens also lived in the corresponding Kwivai Palace. All traces of the lives of their predecessors have long been erased. Until now, there is only this familiar and solid building left. After coming out of Kwivai Palace, the two of them boarded the balance car again. Zhang Lingzi also recovered her mood. She was about to say that she would go to Anping Palace, which was nearby, but when she spoke, she thought that this was her first time here. Visitors, it was not good to act too familiar, so they changed their words hastily. Consultant Shen, where should we go next? Shen Yunqing knew from the direction Zhang Lingzi was looking at where she wanted to go next, so she replied, this is the closest to the Anping Palace where Princess Jinan lived during the Yuan Zhao period. Why don't you go there first? Zhang Lingzi was stunned when she pushed open the vermilion door and saw the furnishings in the palace. Without him, it wouldn't look like anyone had ever lived here. Shen Yunqing's voice sounded behind her at the right time. Since the Yuan Zhao period, this Anping Hall has been converted into a royal library, and no one has lived in it since then. Zhang Lingzi reached out and touched the exceptionally well-preserved books on the bookshelf in front of her. I read historical records that Princess Jinan loved reading books most when she was alive. If she could see the books preserved in the palace where she lived, so many books, should be a pleasure. Shen Yunqing naturally knew that her feelings for Princess Jinan, a young girl, were extraordinary. Hearing this, she couldn't help but remind her, there is also a set of 4 treasures of the study on the desk in the East Room. After research by experts, that set of 4 treasures of the study is very special. Maybe it was the one used by Princess Jinan. Really, Zhang Lingzi said, already walking towards the East Room, and immediately saw the long bookcase under the window that was covered by a huge glass cover. And the complete set of 4 treasures of the study placed under the glass cover was extremely familiar to her. That was the birthday gift she asked Qingyuan to give to Jinan on his 15th birthday. Since then, Jinan has been using it on his desk every day. But now that it was so well protected, it was impossible for her to take it away and put it back for collection. Can I take a photo? Can. Zhang Lingzi took out her cell phone and took several pictures from various angles. Then she put the cell phone away and took a deep breath. Okay, let's go out. I don't know whether it was a tacit understanding or a coincidence, but both of them chose Xiaoming Palace as their last stop in Yinhe Palace. Xiaoming Hall is located in the middle of the front half of Yinhe Palace, and is divided into the front hall and the back hall. The front hall is where civil and military officials once went to court, and the back hall is where the emperor lived, rested, and held small court meetings with his friends and relatives. This palace is also the place Zhang Lingzi is most familiar with. It's just like the palaces we visited before. Xiaoming Palace has gone through several emperors and dynasties after it. Now there are not many familiar places left, and only traces of historical vicissitudes remain on the architecture. Until she walked through the spacious and majestic main hall in front and walked to the small garden between the front and back halls, there was a meal at her feet. In fact, she had seen a cluster of towering treetops in the Xiaoming Palace before, and thought it was a tree planted by a later emperor that made it grow so tall. But looking at the position where the tree grew and the shape of the leaves falling on the ground, it looked like the one she once thought was dead. Fearing that she had seen something wrong, Zhang Lingzi immediately walked towards the tree. When she reached the foot of the tree, she squatted down and picked up a small branch from the ground. Then she reached out and touched the trunk of the tree, This tree. Could it be that when the later emperor saw that the tree was dead, he found a way to find a similar one and planted it in the same place? Shen Yunqing walked behind her, then looked up at the treetops that were swaying slightly in the breeze. It is rumored that this spruce tree was planted by Emperor Yuan Zhao himself. Zhang Lingzi looked at him immediately. Are you sure? Perhaps the tree has become dead and sprang again after she left. That would be a good thing. Shen Yunqing met Zhang Lingzi's looking eyes. It is said that in the second year after Emperor Yuan Zhao left, this spruce tree, which was judged dead by the garden department, was surprised when the snow melted in early spring. It was found that new sprouts had sprouted again. There are also rumors that it was the soul of Emperor Yuan Zhao that possessed it, which caused the dead tree to bloom again and continue to protect the imperial city. Afterwards, the courtyard was repaired several times, and only this cloud tree remained. The cedars were well preserved, which is why they have the towering appearance they have today. Zhang Lingzi had a hard time not laughing out loud. Her soul is still attached to the tree. Can future generations be so outrageous? It is probably that the garden department at that time did not realize the potential vitality of this spruce. The tree was almost cut down, and they were afraid of punishment, so they found this reason. Shen Yunqing nodded calmly, maybe. After walking half a circle around the tree, Zhang Lingzi saw a sign standing in front of the tree, which was engraved with the history of the tree. She leaned over slightly to read it. Now this tree can be considered an antique, right? Zhang Lingzi is quite happy. The tree planted by her own hands was still lush and green after thousands of years and was carefully maintained, and she was still lucky enough to see it. What an opportunity this must be. After looking at the tree, she happily continued walking forward. She didn't look back until she didn't hear the familiar footsteps behind her. Shen Yunqing was indeed still where he was. He was bending down on one knee and reaching out to pick up a leaflet with the iconic attractions of Yinhe Palace that floated over from nowhere. When he stood up and looked up, Zhang Lingzi almost thought that he was going to shout "Your Majesty" to her. There was once a man in purple official uniform who bent down to pick up the book she threw on the ground angrily, and advised her, "Your Majesty, don't be angry." Probably because she was once again in the Xiaoming Palace where she had lived for nearly 30 years, she felt a little confused about time and space. Zhang Lingzi shook her head, trying to shake off the sense of confusion and familiarity. When Shen Yunqing came over with the leaflet, she took it and looked at both sides. She saw that there were some root markings on it in black handwriting. Shen Yunqing explained softly from the side, "It should have been thrown away by tourists when they were visiting here yesterday. Before the staff had time to clean it, it was blown here by the wind." Zhang Lingzi was silent for a moment, feeling that the tone of this explanation was very similar to the voice in his memory. "It seems like shaking my head just now to wake me up has little effect." She raised her eyes to look at the person in front of her, and her words came out faster than her head. Is Consultant Shen interested in taking another part-time job? End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 158. Chapter 158 Acting part-time in a play? What part-time job? Zhang Lingzi raised the brochure with the Yinhe Palace pattern on her hand. As I told you before, I auditioned for a TV series called Empress Yuan Zhao, and now it has been confirmed that I will play the role of the heroine. Shen Yunqing said sincerely, "Congratulations. But now, this project has encountered a problem. The director cannot find a male protagonist who can satisfy him, so the project can only be suspended." Hearing this, Shen Yunqing already had a guess in his mind. Then who is the male protagonist in the play? Prime Minister Dayan, Shen mocking. Since you like Emperor Yuan Zhao in history, you should be no stranger to Prime Minister Shen mocking. Now that the question has been asked, Zhang Lingzi speaks more smoothly. During the time we have been together, I feel that you and Shen mocking are not the same person. It's quite similar. So, do you want to give it a try? Of course, if you don't have time and don't like acting, just pretend I didn't ask this question just now. Although the more she thought about it, she felt that her idea was a good one, but she couldn't force her to do it. Shen Yunqing frowned and thought for a moment, without nodding or shaking his head. Can I go back and think about it, and then give you a reply? Of course, Zhang Lingzi nodded immediately with a smile. I just asked you that. The decision of whether to act or not is definitely yours. It's just that if Shen Yunqing really agrees to participate, then she should feel more natural when she plays the role of Shen Mocking. If other actors were chosen, the difficulty would probably be higher for someone who had really gotten along with Shen Mocking. Furthermore, as this is the first TV series she has starred in after waking up, she still hopes to be as perfect as possible. Shortly after this topic passed, Shen Yunqing's cell phone rang. After the call was connected, Fu Yunchen's excited voice was heard. Consultant Shen, have you and Assistant Zhang finished their work? All the paper rolls in my box have been processed. I have made an important discovery. Can you come over now? Shen Yunqing did not reply immediately, but first looked at Zhang Lingzi, who was standing next to him. Zhang Lingzi didn't really want to nod, but she was a little curious about what she had written on those scrolls when she was a child. After hesitating for a second, she nodded. Shen Yunqing then replied, Assistant Zhang and I will rush back right away. Okay, then I'll wait for you. Hang up the phone. The two of them came out of Xiaoming Palace, boarded the balance car and rushed to the Yinhe Palace office. When I arrived, I saw Fu Yunchen pacing back and forth at the door of a house, waiting. When he saw them coming, he quickly waved, this way. Entering the interior is like entering a world of calligraphy and painting. Hung on the walls, placed on the huge table, and carefully sealed in transparent covers, they are all calligraphy and paintings of different dynasties and different brush strokes. The only flaw is that these paintings and calligraphy have some flaws. Fu Yunchen noticed Zhang Lingzi's eyes looking around, and thought that this was the first time for this girl to come here, so he smiled and said, how about it? It's shocking. The most recent of these paintings and calligraphy are 500 or 600 years old. Yinhe, the research office of the Palace Museum, is considered #1 in the field of calligraphy and painting restoration, and you can't see the scene anywhere else. Zhang Lingzi looked back and nodded in agreement. It's quite shocking. Shen Yunqing looked at the two of them without saying anything, and really had nothing to say. Fu Yunchen showed off to the wrong person this time. In front of His Majesty, no one dares to say that they have a rich collection. Fu Yunchen is the first. It can only be said that the ignorant are fearless. While talking, the three of them had already walked to the table in the middle. There was already a researcher in a white coat holding a magnifying glass with his face almost pressed to the table to look at a piece of paper spread out on the table. He didn't even notice anyone coming next to him. After waiting for a while, Fu Yunchen didn't wait for the man to step back. He had no choice but to reach out and pat him on the shoulder. Old Wang, let's take a break first. Don't you want to be so close to me? Don't you want to have more than 2000 degrees of myopia? Hey, I'm taking this seriously, don't disturb me. Don't you believe that this was written by Emperor Yuan Zhao himself? I just called Consultant Chen over. He is an expert in this field and asked him to judge it for us. The middle-aged man who was called Lao Wang put down his magnifying glass and stood up. He took off his glasses and pressed his eyes against his dry eyes. He took a step back and nodded to Shen Yunqing, Consultant Shen, come and take a look. Shen Yunqing was hesitant. He didn't stop when he walked to where Lao Wang was standing just now. He took another half step forward, and there was just a space left. Assistant Zhang is coming too. After Lao Wang stepped aside, the words on the paper could already be seen from where Zhang Lingzi stood. Just as she was watching intently, she heard Shen Yunqing calling her and subconsciously walked over. What does Assistant Zhang think? Lao Wang put his glasses back on and saw that there was another young girl, but after hearing Shen Yunqing's name, he raised his eyebrows and said nothing. Zhang Lingzi. Hand in hand, ask her what she thinks of the words she wrote before. She felt a little want to laugh and replied seriously, it looks like the handwriting of Emperor Yuan Zhao is correct. Shen Yunqing immediately nodded. The author himself has confirmed it? Is there anything more convincing than this? She nodded immediately, Assistant Zhang and I agree. No, it was the turn of Lao Wang, the only one who had an objection, to be anxious. Although Emperor Yuan Zhao did not leave many calligraphy works to future generations, I was lucky enough to see one or two of them. Although the words on this paper are, it is indeed similar to the strokes of Emperor Yuan Zhao, but the writing is much stiffer. I am more inclined to think that someone is imitating the handwriting of Emperor Yuan Zhao. Fu Yunqian heard that Shen Yunqing confirmed his opinion, so he stood aside with his head held high. After listening to Lao Wang's words, he just waited quietly for Shen Yunqing to dismiss it. Shen Yunqing lowered his eyes and looked at the words on the paper. He could recognize that the paper he was writing on was Tingtao paper, which was used by nobles at that time. Thousands of years later, the ink still had a faint fragrance, and it should be no surprise that it was pine-scented ink. It is not royal paper, nor is it royal ink. He had some guesses in his heart, and just as he was about to speak, he heard a faint but determined voice from the side. Have you ever thought about it, Teacher Wang, that this character was written by Emperor Yuan Zhao when he was practicing calligraphy when he was young? Lao Wang was stunned for a moment when he was asked, and his face suddenly became more thoughtful. However, Fu Yunqian clapped his hands and said, it's really possible. When I first started practicing calligraphy when I was a child, it was definitely not as smooth and natural as my later writing. Combined with the grasshopper cage, small wooden sword, small bow, etc. that were also placed in the box, weren't they all from that time? Children like to play. Look at it this way, this box is the childhood memory of Emperor Yuan Zhao. As he spoke, his voice changed again, but looking at it this way, although Emperor Yuan Zhao grew up in a girl's family, he had the same temperament as a boy. He also played with things like grasshoppers and small wooden swords that boys like, and even learned embroidery. They were all embroidered in a mess. I also asked Teacher Yao, who is in charge of embroidery research in our institute, to check it out. She only recognized that the materials of the fan and the embroidery thread were very expensive, and the age was about the same as we guessed. It was thousands of years old, but she was stunned. I didn't see what the green thing above was, ha ha ha. Zhang Lingzi. There is no need to say the next thing. Although no one here knows it, she still wants to save face. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 159. Chapter 159. The Director of Health recommends a person to you. Although Zhang Lingzi wanted to take back this small box that exposed her dark history, she soon discovered that this idea was unrealistic. A few paper rolls are still here, but other grasshopper cages, small wooden swords, round fans, and other objects have been taken to experts in different fields for study. Even the small box needs to study the wood, the mechanism lock on it and the pattern. In short, very separate. She had no choice but to give up. Fortunately, she did not write anything on this scroll, but a serious calligraphy practice work. The handwriting is immature, a little immature, but it is not considered black history. After confirming that the words on the scroll were indeed written by Emperor Yuan Zhao, Lao Wang decisively changed his mind. If you look closely at this word, although the writing style is a bit immature and the turns are a little stiff, it has already begun to show its character and is domineering. It is a masterpiece of youth. Looking at his expression, Zhang Lingzi was sure that what he said was sincere. After finishing the appreciation, Before leaving, Zhang Lingzi couldn't help but asked, "Director Fu, how will the museum deal with this new discovery?" Fu Yunqian replied without hesitation, "Emperor Yuan Zhao left too few antiques to future generations. It can be said to be the fewest among the emperors in history. Although the things discovered this time are all items from Emperor Yuan Zhao's childhood, wait for after restoration and protection, it will most likely be put on display to fill the gaps in the collection related to Emperor Yuan Zhao." Zhang Lingzi's vision almost went dark, and she was also puzzled at the same time. "I have obviously used and collected a lot of things, and I also have quite a few good calligraphy and painting works. Why shouldn't I leave only these few things? Could it be that everything has been destroyed in the course of this 1,000 years of history? But if you want to destroy it, you can't just destroy hers, right? Or it is possible that some future emperors could not bear to see a woman like her become emperor." Until he left Yinhe Palace, Zhang Lingzi's doubts could not be answered. Asterisk. Z1, Zen Courtyard. Liuju withdrew his fingers from Shen Yunqing's wrist and said, "This time's pulse is much better than last time," he said in a different tone. "However, you do have a bit of a tangle on your face. Is there anything that could influence you? Is it something to do with His Majesty?" Other than that person, he couldn't think of anyone else in the world who would cause trouble for the person in front of him. "I can't hide it from you." Shen Yunqing shook his sleeves and nodded. "Your Majesty, she introduced me to a part-time job today." "Part-time job?" Liuju was stunned for a moment. "Do you still need to work part-time? Your Majesty is planning to play the heroine of Empress Yuan Zhao, that is, herself. Now the crew has not decided on the male lead. She probably thought that I was suitable, so she asked me if I would like to play Shen Mocking." Cough. Liuju couldn't care less about his image as a monk now, and laughed until he coughed. Finally stopped. "It is true that no one is more suitable to play the male and female protagonists of this drama than you two. So, you are worried?" Shen Yunqing nodded. "I'm afraid that I will act too much like myself and arouse His Majesty's suspicion. But I also thought that if someone else were to play Shen Mocking," he raised his hand and tapped his heart, "then I will watch them as kings and ministers in the play. Xiangda, I feel like it's a bit crowded here." After all, he will definitely watch the TV series starring His Majesty after it is broadcast. Liuju changed into a comfortable position and looked at the person sitting opposite him with interest. He recognized the former Prime Minister of Dayan, Shen Mocking, who was able to strategize and win thousands of miles. I also recognize Shen Yunqing, the current nobleman in the business world, who has sharp methods and can turn his hands into clouds. But it is too rare to be as hesitant as now. Sure enough, whether it is Shen Mocking in the previous life or Shen Yunqing in this life, as long as he meets His Majesty, he will have to taste the pain of entangled love. When he was almost done admiring it, he opened his mouth and pointed out one thing. "Do you think, with His Majesty's keen mind, she will never notice anything strange in her life? Unless you just let go and leave her world far away. Otherwise, how many of you are there? The more you get along with her, the more exposed you will be to her." Shen Yunqing was silent for a long time. "I was just kidding myself." He suddenly remembered that His Majesty had asked him for the Shen family tree before. Perhaps from that time, His Majesty had already suspected that he was related to Shen Mocking. "Perhaps I didn't think that he was Shen Mocking, but I should have guessed that he might be a descendant of Shen Mocking. Coupled with this part-time invitation, Your Majesty will not ask him, who is not an actor at all, for no reason. Okay, I know what to do. In short, it is impossible to leave." Zhang Lingzi received the message from Shen Yunqing after dinner and when she was about to read a book before going to bed. "Can I please Miss Zhang and tell me the contact information of the director of Empress Yuan Zhao?" After reading this message, two words flashed in Zhang Lingzi's mind: "There is a way." He replied, "Wait a moment." Then he closed the book and called Wei Minmin. Although Tong Yu also has the contact information of Empress Yuan Zhao, the one added is a work number. When it comes to delivering news, it is definitely not as convenient as Wei Minmin's. Wei Minmin is indeed a level 10 surfer. As soon as she sent the message, she received a reply within seconds. Sister 11, what's going on? Zhang Lingzi got straight to the point. I want Director Wei's contact information so that I can contact him directly. I want to recommend him a suitable candidate for the male lead. After reading the news, Wei Minmin immediately got up and ran to the study, showing the news to her uncle who was still immersed in work. Wei Xiao pondered for a few seconds after reading it, and then nodded. The choice of the male protagonist is currently his biggest headache, so it doesn't hurt to make an exception. What if the person recommended this time is reliable? Share my private account. Zhang Lingzi received the number and then sent it to Shen Yunqing. After getting a received reply, she turned off the screen of her phone and put it aside, then picked up the book to read again. The next step was to communicate between Shen Yunqing and Director Wei. She regarded herself as the middleman. Whether it could succeed in the end depended on whether the two were satisfied with each other. Wei Xiao watched his eldest niece send his number and then took the phone and waited. He thought he would wait for Zhang Lingzi's friend application first. After all, there were many people in the circle who wanted to add him, and that girl didn't even want to come. We'll miss this opportunity. As a result, after waiting for several minutes, he was about to put the phone back, but the phone finally vibrated in his hand. Clicking on the prompt to apply for a friend, he first looked at the notes. When he saw the name of the person in the notes clearly, he paused. Is this the wrong edition? Wei Minmin didn't leave at this moment. She was also curious about who Sister 11 recommended. After hearing this, she quickly came over and said, Hello, Director Wei, I am Shen Yunqing. Shen Yunqing, in the circle is there an actor named this? But it's a pretty nice name. Wei Xiao came back to his senses when his eldest niece muttered to herself, and said quietly after hearing the words, there is indeed no one in the entertainment industry, but there is one in the business world. However, it is also possible that it is the same name. Yes, it should be the same name. After all, how could that person neglect a good business and come here to act? Speaking, he clicked on the application. However, to be cautious, he still sent a message to confirm, Hello, I am Wei Xiao. Are you recommended by Zhang Lingzi to try out the role of Shen Mocking? When he saw the word yes coming back, Wei Xiao was completely relieved. It seems like there is a duplicate name. But soon another message came, I heard that the audition requires a recent photo. I will take one and send it to you. Wei Xiao had just typed the word OK, but before he could click send, a photo appeared in the chat interface. He clicked to enlarge, and the photo suddenly filled the entire screen. I saw a man sitting in a quaint study room under the dim light, wearing a moon-white gown and nodding slightly at the camera. His eyes were obviously very peaceful, but at this moment, it was as if he was looking directly through the photo, as if he were a real person. Wei Minmin's eyes were full of stars, and she couldn't help but exclaimed, Wow! Isn't this Shen Mocking herself? Where did Sister 11 find the young master from the aristocratic family? Wei Xiao was once again shocked to the point of losing his mind. It's really him. Has it become popular these days for big names to come and experience acting? End of this chapter. Her Majesty the Queen has become a god in the entertainment industry. Author, Press 11. Chapter 160. Chapter 160 finally waited for the notice. Zhang Lingzi did not ask how Shen Yunqing and Wei Xiao were chatting, but first received a video call from Wei Minmin. As soon as I got through, I heard a series of screams of "Ah!" Stop. Wei Minmin quickly took a deep breath and shut up obediently. Zhang Lingzi looked at the time on the wall clock beside her and said, Do you know what time it is now? You are disturbing the people in the air. It's only 9 o'clock. Sister 11, do you usually go to bed so early? Go to bed early and get up early for good health. Wei Min Min, there is no way to refute. Wait, she didn't make this video to discuss what time to go to bed. Sister 11, you are so powerful, how can you invite Mr. Shen? I just asked casually looking at you like this, he had a good chat with the director of health. Not only is it good, I have never seen my brother-in-law speak so gently to anyone. But I am not telling you that the moment I saw the photo of Mr. Shen, I felt that he was Shen mocking himself. No wonder my uncle has such a good attitude. Zhang Lingzi raised her eyebrows, really? You think so too? Wei Minmin nodded vigorously like a chicken pecking rice. My uncle was still video chatting with Mr. Shen in the study, so I slipped out on my own. If the negotiation can really be concluded, Sister 11, you can help Yuan Zhao. The crew of the Empress also had a big favor from my brother-in-law. It's also to help myself. Yes, I have also helped other actors who have been confirmed, and the crew finally hopes to start filming. Before going to sleep, Zhang Lingzi looked at her phone again. There was no message from Shen Yunqing and Wei Minmin, so she put down her phone and decided to fall asleep. Until the next day, Tong Yu came over very early in the morning. Zhang Lingzi felt reassured when she saw the happy look on her face. Have you received a notification from the crew? How did you guess so accurately this time? Tong Yu couldn't help but exclaimed, and handed over the phone with a smile on her face. I just got up this morning and wanted to see what entertainment news there was today, and this notification came. It's coming. It's really exciting to wait, and it's unexpected. Zhang Lingzi took the phone and looked at the notification information displayed on it. First, congratulations to her for passing the audition for the role of the heroine Zhang Yuanzhao, and then the time and place for setting the makeup. Very businesslike. Other actors should have received the notice at about the same time. She handed the phone back and said, the makeup setting time is tomorrow. Didn't you just come here just to take a look at this notification? One more thing. Didn't you ask me casually the day before yesterday whether the company was recruiting composition trainees with zero basic knowledge? I happened to go to Mr. Xiao's office yesterday to report on my work, so I asked about it. Zhang Lingzi poured a glass of water and handed it over. It doesn't seem to work. Tong Yu sighed and nodded. You also know that many young people now have a dream of becoming a star. It is indeed a bit late now. The company has signed up a lot some time ago and the staff is already saturated. Even if you can put your brother in now, but everyone who went in at the front was clear, so he came in through the back door, so he would probably be squeezed out. Although she didn't finish the next words, Zhang Lingzi understood what she meant. Because of the experience of being in a juvenile detention center, even though Zhang Lingzi tried his best to hide it, he was still particularly concerned about this past. If you are excluded again, it will definitely not be conducive to physical and mental growth. Then let's put this aside for now. There will always be a way for the car to reach the mountain. By the way, the company is going to send you an assistant. Zhang Lingzi couldn't help but frowned. Isn't there already Zheng Zheng? Does Zheng Zheng want to resign? No, no, Tong Yu waved her hands hurriedly, the company wants to arrange another assistant for you. Female lead, the role is heavy. When the time comes to join the crew, Zheng Zheng will not be enough to have just one assistant, and it will be difficult for you two girls to do some rough and heavy work, so you should be assigned a male assistant. Zhang Lingzi held the water glass and said nothing. Seeing her like this, Tong Yu asked tentatively, don't you want a new assistant? Let's talk about it when we are really too busy. That's okay, although Tong Yu didn't understand why she didn't accept such a good offer, but hearing what Zhang Lingzi said, she knew that she really didn't want to accept the new assistant. I will temporarily reject the matter when I return to the company. Those who want to be your assistant will probably be disappointed. Is there anyone else vying to be my assistant? It's true that it didn't happen before, but now, Do you believe that when I send this notice to the company, many people come to you and recommend themselves? Then it's better not to say anything. Tong Yu smiled and picked up her bag and stood up. Let's rest at home for another day. Starting from tomorrow, you will be completely busy. Zhang Lingzi sent her to the door. I don't plan to go out today. I'm going to finish reading the book I didn't finish yesterday. At noon, she liked the circle of friends posted by Lu Zhengzheng, who was visiting the museum alone. Today, it is not just Tong Yu who came to her artist's door happily early in the morning. Many managers in the industry feel that today's weather is particularly bright and sunny. Shiman had already asked her assistant to pack her luggage. She read the news about passing the audition 3 times before she breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, I've waited for this notification. If this notification doesn't come, I'll give it to you. I'm about to give up. The agent sat opposite her. Like you, I plan to contact you for other jobs. When I saw this notice this morning, I thought it was a fake. The two couldn't help but smile at each other. But why did this notice come so suddenly? I made some inquiries with people I knew on the way here, and it seems that Director Wei finally decided on the male lead. Shiman was immediately curious, who made the final decision? I really don't know about this, I keep it a secret. It's not easy, Shiman couldn't help but sigh. When I go to the set tomorrow to try on makeup, I will know who Director Wei has chosen out of thousands of people. And the heroine, I don't know why, I always feel it will be Zhang Lingzi. This time, her agent did not insist that it was impossible for Zhang Lingzi to get the female lead. Since Su Qingmei went to The Legend of the Fallen, there is indeed no news about the female lead auditioning from Director Wei. Then the female artist who went to the audition that day, there must be one person playing the female lead, but compared to Zhang Lingzi, I think it is more likely to be Wei Minmin, who is more famous than Zhang Lingzi and is the niece of Director Wei. Shiman waved her hand and said, let's stop guessing here. When tomorrow passes, all the truth will be revealed. That's true. Lin Suifei was still a little impatient when she was woken up by the call from her agent. She glanced at her boyfriend who was sleeping soundly next to her, got up and covered the phone's microphone and walked quietly to the bathroom next to her before answering, what the hell? Why are you calling so early in the morning? However, the agent was not affected by her anger at all this time. You passed the audition. Lin Suifei's mind was still a little confused. What audition? The audition for Empress Yuan Zhao. You've been living so drunkenly at Mr. Chen's house these days. Could it be that you've forgotten such an important thing? Master Chen was woken up by the sound of a jingling bell. When he opened his eyes, he saw that his celebrity girlfriend was fully dressed and had a suitcase in her hand. Where are you going? Film. End of this chapter.